able to actually request for that.
Sorry, I just started recording. Yes, there's actually a question I wanted to ask you that I didn't send you in the line of questions. What exactly do you do in terms of corporate and commercial, and do you love it?
I do love it. It's the one I actually wanted to join. So I was very happy when I had a chance to get a rotation there and when I started getting involved in the work. So corporate commercial is about corporate governance. So companies, so your private companies, your public companies, your non-profit companies, all types of companies. It's about also mergers and acquisitions. So if an entity or a private person, sorry, a natural person is looking to purchase equity in another entity, then we facilitate that. Yeah, just corporate governance, all your agreements. So whatever agreement you can think of. The latest agreement that I'm actually working on is franchise agreement. So it's business structures. It's basically dealing with various business structures and facilitating um, the functioning of different businesses, from the acquisition of businesses, the governance of the business, to maybe the termination of the business.
Oh, wow. That is amazing.
Yeah,
That's absolutely amazing. Okay,
yeah.
thank you so much. I'm just gonna reserve the questions from you guys at the end. So if there's anything you can think about now that you'd like to ask Dambi, so you can just jot it down. Um, and then what inspired you to pursue a legal career? Were you like looking at businesses? Were you like 15 years old and like
that's a very great question, actually. So I have an IT background. So in high
Oh,
school, I did IT. Yes, I did IT in high school, and even in university, in first and second year, I took information systems. And even though I'm not as good as people who have actually studied computer science, I'm actually great at coding, right? And I've always known that I've always wanted to understand how business works and the law. So I've always known this in my head. I've always said I like um, debating and thinking about how things should function. I really love businesses as well. And I also love IT. And then, so I didn't even know what I was going to study. In fact, I broke my mother's heart. I was supposed to study medicine. So
uh,
my parents still believe that they still ask me, they're like, so when are you going to medical school? I'm like, please, like, give it up now. Anyway, so this one time in 20, I think it was 2016 or so, Facebook, there was a big scandal with Facebook where it was found that it was basically selling its users' personal information. And the US Senate had hearings for Mark Zuckerberg, and the questions they were asking him was very laughable to us as the IT class. And we thought, wait, do people who make law not understand how business and technology works? This is insane. Like, Haibo, how is this possible? So then I thought, oh, I know how this works. I love businesses. I love technology. I have a good understanding of how it works. I think I'm going to be a lawyer that deals with that aspect. So that's how I knew I wanted to go into corporate commercial and technology law and so on.
okay, that's absolutely amazing. I didn't know that. By the way, guys, Dambisa and I are actually friends in our personal lives, and I didn't know this about her. I'm like shook. Can I also ask you a side
Yes.
question in relation to this because I didn't know this? So would you then go into
Yeah.
like cybersecurity? Because I find cybersecurity so interesting looking
Yeah.
at what's going on now. So much there's so such a huge gap in privacy law in terms of what these companies can access. I mean, when you go online and whatnot, and also with AI like blowing up now, is that something you'd be interested in going into?
Well, yes. So I am also involved in that in corporate commercial at the firm. So I've been involved in transactions and agreements that involved the use of people's data and personal information, as well as like the agreements that go into that, as well as when you sign into a website, the terms and conditions, drafting those terms and conditions. So that is an area that I'm involved in, but I would love to transition more into that area and get more exposure because I am fairly new. So I will be taking up space in that area of the law
Take
when
a
the opportunity presents itself. Yeah.
yeah. Gosh, that's
Yeah.
no, that's amazing. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Okay, and then for the
I
next
really enjoy my job. Like, I'm so grateful to God. I really love it.
uh, that is absolutely amazing because another thing is before we go to the next question, a lot of the times people think that, for example, I didn't think that practice could look like that, right? You think that practice is just like court and just fighting people and the advocate and so
Yeah.
I don't know, like even at this point in time I'm like blown away by everything that you're telling me, so that's
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. Okay,
Yeah.
let's go to the next question. In terms of the intro and career journey, can you walk us through your journey from law school, so basically university, to admission? Were there any unexpected twists or key lessons along the way?
So the journey from law school into admission. So I'm going to start with sorry, not law school, university. So I'm going to, law school, I mean university,
Yeah,
not,
same,
uh,
same.
not like what is the other law school called? The one during articles.
I think,
Not that one. I mean actual university.
yeah, university.
So yeah, so I went to the University of Cape Town here, in Cape Town, obviously, and I had in high school, I had like a very easy time academically. I'm not going to lie. So I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder, and I thought, well, I mean, my parents made me read books. I mean, I was reading like political books. So I had a very easy time like reading. So I thought it's not going to be tough. It's going to be a breeze. It's going to be a walk in the park. And my mother says, you love debating anyway. So you will be right at home at law school. So then first year, it's okay. It's like the constitution, history. I'm like, great, great. Second year is also fine. I'm cruising. Third year is when it started to get very tricky, very, very tricky, especially because for the first time in my life, I was faced with failure. I failed a subject called the law of delect. Mind you, I had never even failed like a test. So I just failed the whole course. I was like, what is going on? So I had to bounce back. It was a very, very hard hit. And someone who had been like academically very stellar in high school, having to deal with failure, it was very, very difficult for me. I remember I had like anxiety attacks. It was though I didn't know who I was anymore. So I had to overcome that. And I had to approach university with like technique for the first time as opposed to just winging it, because you think you're naturally smart and you grasp topics very easily. So then I had to actually study. I had to look at the lecturers and see that there's a specific way in which you need to answer for each particular lecturer.
Mm.
And you really have to study and put in the hard yards. So that's what I learned from university. And I think that carried me through to even when I was doing articles. So articles is very, very tough because you get there and you don't know how to use the printer. And it's so disempowering from being able to debate about the constitution or a law, and basically being told you have such a great future. We have one of the most progressive constitutions in the world. We're such a promising country. And then you get to this environment and you're in an office. There's no grander scheme of things. And there's no lecturer to tell you about the beauty of the constitution or the beauty of the economy in my case. So you're bogged down by the actual procedure and the everydayness of legal practice. You don't know how to use the printer. You're so afraid and tentative. You feel like you're not worthy to be there. There's it's just very intimidating, and it was a challenge, but luckily I think I surrounded myself with great mentors at Fairbridges, and that's how I think I've come this far.
That's absolutely amazing. I resonate so much with your story, before we go into like how you secured articles, because I also failed a module in uni, and I was also on the same streak. I was like, ah, ha, ha, you know, I was like, I'm feeling it. And then came third year, and I had my first like failure, and I thought, this is terrible. They're gonna see my academic record. Nobody's gonna be interested, you know. So I
Yeah.
definitely resonate with that. And I think I did post something on LinkedIn asking if does it really matter how much your average is and how your academic record looks? Because a lot of the time, students in their 50s and 60s, I remember even when I was in uni, they already had this, I don't know, mindset that they're not going to make it far in any events because their marks are so low. And then when you hit a failure, you also think, no, it's not going to work out for me because now I don't have this perfect academic record. Nobody's going to want me and stuff like that. So, do you think that that is something that plays a huge role in your ability to secure opportunities if you do struggle a bit here and there during your time in university?
I mean, I would just give you the advice that I was given by recruiters. So they would say, like, marks are not everything. If you can show development in other aspects of your life. In fact, people who are recruiters are looking for well-rounded people
Yeah.
because when you go again into a corporate space, your marks will help you, I guess, in the technical areas like research and whatnot, but that's something you can teach anyone. You can teach someone to research properly. But you're going to need emotional intelligence, you're going to need communication skills, you're going to need leadership skills, you're going to need all these soft skills
Mm.
to carry you through corporate and articles. So you should also develop those. Are as important, if not more important, than your academics.
Yeah, I definitely agree
So
with.
I'd say that they're equally important, and that if you have your 50s and your 60s, it's not a train smash. If you can sell yourself, if you can show you have all these other soft skills, and you are able to have the requisite technical skills to be able to cope in that environment, I don't think it's a train smash.
Mm. I would say it's definitely just to agree with you. Sorry, I just want to. Sorry, guys, do you mind just muting when you join the call? Okay, let me just mute. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I would say that I definitely would agree that I had the same experience because it was just the first year after graduating where they were like, give us your academic record. But the one thing that I think matters more, definitely more than the academic record, is your ability to show that you can function in a professional work environment. And that's where the skills acquisition comes in and also the experience because basically what I'm talking about in the contents that I've posted is that the skills that you can get waitressing or in your debate club or whatever, they are transferable skills that you can use to get a legal job because the same emotional intelligence you need in the one environment is the same emotional intelligence that you're going to be using in the next environment or in the legal environment. So it's not necessarily a one way anyway thing. There are so many other ways that you can, I don't know, pursue to sort of put something on your CV in case your marks are not enough to carry you or to keep you afloat. So we definitely agree on that. Okay, so now we're just going next to the second round of questions. This is basically focusing on the aspects of opportunities and back work for a lot of, because I know that this is a pressing issue for a lot of students, especially probably some of the people who are on this call now. So did you sorry, I'm just admitting this person. Did you secure vacation work or articles easily, or did you have to take an alternate route? How was that experience for you? Like in uni, did you secure vacation work? And then after graduating, did you secure articles easily, or how was the job search for you?
The job search it was okay. It wasn't too horrible. I think I need to give credit to the University of Cape Town. They have a department called Career Services
Mhm.
that's dedicated to making sure that people are employable after they graduate, but they work with you while you're doing your degree. So they have they have workshops on how to write a CV. They have people who are going to look at your CV and your cover letter, and they have people who are going to conduct mock interviews. They even called people from big five firms to conduct mock interviews with us and give us feedback. So I think I just used the resources that were at my disposal at the University of Cape Town. So I didn't have as hard a time. So whenever we had vacation work, I was able to apply. I was able to take my CV to them, and they would check it, check the cover letter, and I would have a mock interview. And they taught me the importance of being able to interview correctly. So I think that's so important. I think people don't take that seriously enough, that your ability to sell yourself beyond what you've just submitted is very, very important. So I did as a result get a lot of back work, and they told us to start with work like early from first year. So from first year, we did what's called soft work. So we used to shadow magistrates and go to different like legal departments and see how it worked. And then it was towards third and fourth year where it was vacation work in an actual law firm. So I would say I did have an easy time, but it's because of the University of Cape Town and the structures that they had in place to make sure that people have work and ultimately articles when they're done.
Mm. Sure, that's actually so it's both great to hear, but it also makes me feel a little sad because there's a lot of people in universities where they don't get opportunities like that. And I
Yeah,
recently had somebody reach out to me on LinkedIn who's studying through UNISA, and she's saying she wouldn't even know where to start. So that's another thing that like sort of pains my heart to think of like what can we do as legal professionals to sort of provide that in a sense for people who don't have access to opportunities like that. Because with my university, I
yeah,
think it was around, I went to UFS in Bloemfontein,
yeah,
and I think it was around
yeah,
maybe second, third year when they started to do things like that, but it wasn't necessarily the university orchestrating it. It would be like associations, and it would be on and off. You wouldn't really know, it wasn't like a very organized structure as it was for you at the University of Cape Town. So I don't know. Hopefully in the future, you and I and maybe some other professionals, we can collaborate to see how we can bring something like that for maybe like do a workshop on CV writing and interviewing. I think that would be amazing. Would you be interested in that?
definitely. I'd definitely be interested in that. I have mentees at the moment who are still at the University of Cape Town. And well, I was again. They also have mentorship programs where older law students mentor younger law students, and I still keep in contact with my mentees, and I do help them with that because sometimes even at the University of Cape Town, people don't always know about the resources at their disposal.
Mhm.
So I do have mentees that I do assist in that regard, and I'd be happy to assist. Even now, UCT Career Services, they have a website that other people can access who are not students at the University of Cape Town. And it shows you how to write your CV, shows you how to write your cover letter. So I would encourage people to look at that at their website.
All right.
I think it's called UCT Career Services.
Okay, I think we can touch base after this call and I'll post it on LinkedIn and tag
Yeah,
you. Yeah, I'll post it on the
yeah,
LinkedIn group and also just on the wider LinkedIn space and tag you. And then yeah, maybe if
yeah,
anybody like has a question
yeah.
about it, because also the mentorship question has come up a few times and I've never mentored anybody. So I'm just like, I don't know what to tell you. So it'll be great if we could do that because at the end of the day, you have the skills and the knowledge and the experience, but you just want to be able to offer them to somebody in a way that will be meaningful to them, the way that it's been done for
Yeah.
you and the way that you're doing for other people. So it would be amazing. So, guys, stay tuned. Dambisa
Yeah.
and I will definitely keep in touch in respect of this aspect. And hopefully, this is something that is useful to you because I was speaking to Sisonke before you joined, and she's actually got an interview on Wednesday for a legal intern position.
Oh, wow, that's wonderful, Sisoke. That's great. I'd love to give you some tips towards the end of the session that maybe no one has taught you yet that I've learned.
Hey, yay. So get those questions coming, Sisonke, in the meantime. Okay, cool. And then, okay, so the next question would have been, how did you approach the job hunt after graduation? What worked and what didn't? But I'm assuming it wasn't that hard because, again, the UC, the University of Cape Town really provided a really good environment for you guys. It's not like it was the first time you were encountering law firms by the time you were applying, right?
Yes, so by the time I was applying, I'd already done back work in first and second year, soft back work where we shadowed magistrates and then in actual law firms. So it was just the CV. It's important to write a proper CV and a proper cover letter. That's very important. And then preparing for your interview is very, very important. So, for example, and this will be helpful to Sisonke. So, in an interview process, you really have to prepare for the interview. You have to anticipate questions that they might ask you, and you need to learn how to. You can't assume that, well, they have my CV, so I'm going to, I don't know, be very succinct and short. It's a sales pitch about why you would make a great fit for the law firm. So that's how I approached it. And I did watch a lot of YouTube videos. There's this, I have to plug her. She's so amazing. There's this lady who used to work as a recruiter for Bowman's. I think her name is Buitepo. Oh, I hope I'm not getting her name incorrectly, but she has YouTube videos and where she basically tells like law students who want to do articles how to answer questions in an interview, the do's and the don'ts, like things that you would never have thought of.
Mm.
So I think watch as many YouTube videos as you can from people who've gotten articles. Those are very helpful because they'll give you tips that you haven't thought about.
Mm. Mm. Okay.
Yes, sorry. Thank you so much. It's Buipelo Boshale. Yes, sorry, that's her name. Thank you so much for pointing that out. She's so amazing. I definitely did take her tips into account.
Okay. I wouldn't even, she sounds familiar, but again, just like you're saying, I watch so many videos, I don't even remember whose videos I watch. All I know is that I watch a lot of them.
Yeah,
A
she's
lot.
really amazing. There's videos where she even talks to, I think she was a recruiter for Bowman's then. She would speak to people who had already gotten in, and she gave the best tips.
Mm, mm, okay. That's amazing. That's definitely
Yeah.
somebody to check out. I'll also see if I
Yeah.
can connect with her. Maybe we could do a call. I don't know. We'll see. All right. And
Yeah.
then the next question, going into the CV, as you've mentioned how important it is that your CV and your cover letter make sense. So, what made your CV or interview approach stand out when you were looking for articles? What would you say is the essence of what made your CV stand out besides I don't know. Obviously, you had the experience, but another thing is people will have, I've seen it with even people who've been in the industry for years. Their CV is just paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs. Even when you first look at it, you're just like, oh gosh, I don't want to know anymore. So, what would
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
say is your approach for your CV and also like your interview approach?
So my CV approach, it was to follow the format recommended by obviously UCT Career Services and the people on YouTube and LinkedIn, and they did. I think they said 3 or 4 pages. I don't know, but not very. Mustn't be too long. Um, Take out anything that's irrelevant. So my achievements from high school, I
I
was
have my
told like
achievements from high school on my CV.
I did not take my achievements from high school didn't matter anymore. I mean, I may be wrong, but I did not do that. Yes, and so I'd look at the skills that they were specifically looking for. So I'd have like a section about leadership, and then I'd say I was a mentor during the year of 2021, where I mentored 5 first-year law students and you to talk about what you mentored them about integration to the law faculty, about better study methods, etc. I think be very describe the value that you amassed by virtue of what you did. So it
Hmm.
was mentorship, it was IT, it was communication and debating. So I used part of Mood Society. And then work experience, I explained that I was an independent contractor for this company. It's an overseas company called Librio, where we summarize legislation for people, for lay people. So already that tells the interviewer that I know how to interact with legislation, I know how to read long texts and simplify them, which is a skill you will need when you're working at a law firm, because when you interact with clients, you're not going to necessarily quote the legislation. You're going to say you can or you can't do this. If you can, this is why you can do it. If you can't, this is why you can do it. You're not gonna, they're not your professors. So you're showing to them that you can communicate in a simple and effective manner. So that's what your CV needs to show. And then interview style, I did practice for it. You must practice. There are PDFs online of, and I told this to my mentees, there are PDFs that show all the potential questions that someone may ask you and the reason for why they're asking you and how you're meant to answer those questions. When someone says, tell me about yourself, they do not mean your hobbies, like they don't mean your hobbies. So they don't want to hear that you like watching movies. Maybe they may want to hear that you play golf because maybe in a corporate space there is golf day, so maybe that's useful. So study your environment and what is useful in selling you as someone who would make a good fit and bring value to the place where you're applying.
Definitely.
And be yourself. Like, I'd also say, be yourself. Don't sell a version of yourself that doesn't exist. Like, don't look into so much of what I'm saying to the point where you erase the essence of who you are. So I'm quite quirky, so I was still quirky in the interviews because I mean that's who I am. I don't want to sell them a false version, and then I get there and then this is not what they, and then they're like, oh my goodness, she's so quirky, I'm not sure she's going to be a good fit. Like, they need to, because also as much as you are interviewing for the job is also interviewing for you. You also need to look at it and see if it would be a good fit for you as well. Would you be happy? Do you see yourself thriving in that environment? So also look out for that, I'd say.
Definitely. And I think what I would add on that is that at the end of the day, the interview process it is just a conversation. That's something that I figured out along the line, that you don't have to be this like robot and present the best version of what you think is perfect. You are just having a conversation with the other person, which makes it easier that way because then you're able to calm down a bit and, just speak freely, obviously while still being within the bounds of professionalism and whatnot. But I think that's something that people, because recently our company was interviewing and they were like, this person was just being like, yes, no, I don't think. And that doesn't really work. So yeah, thank you so much for that. And also
Yeah, I mean,
no, go
sorry to cut you off. Yeah,
ahead.
sorry to cut you off. I mean, I had an interview where it was a very weird interview. Not weird, but they asked me like a question, right? And they said, what drink do you order when you are out? And I was like, do you mean like an alcoholic beverage? And he said, yes. I said, I don't drink. And that was the end of it. And I'm happy it was, because I mean, I wouldn't have been accommodated there, because I mean, I think the assumption is that, oh, I must be boring then. And
Yeah,
I don't think I am. So
yeah,
I was like, okay, that's a weird question to ask someone. I wonder, like, what's the purpose behind that question? So
yeah.
literally be yourself. Like, I did think about, I mean, if I was really trying hard to fit in, I probably would have lied and said some cocktail or something. But I thought, no, I'm going to be myself. I'm going to say, I don't drink, at the risk of me probably seeming uptight and boring and rigid. But it's just who I am. I'm not uptight, I'm not boring, I'm not rigid, but I don't drink. And I hope as an interviewer, you can find other questions that will let you know whether I'm flexible and adaptable rather than do I drink.
Yeah, yeah. No, but with Cape Town law firms especially, it gets a little crazy because that's their like favorite thing.
Yeah.
My managing director told me that he wouldn't have given me the job if he knew I didn't drink.
Wow, Cape Townians and the alcoholic beverages.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, well,
Yeah,
good thing I wasn't interviewed by him.
yeah, definitely.
Okay, let's talk about life after admission. So you were just admitted a few months ago in February. Congratulations. That's amazing. And
Thank you.
so tell me, what was going through your mind on the day when you were like officially admitted?
I was very happy. I was so grateful for the faith that people had in me, the investments that they'd made, the exposure to work that I had been given. Because as I joined the call, I saw that you were saying that there are some people at some firms where um, they're just in the background and they don't necessarily get the nice, like sexy work to do. So they can kind of get like lost in the mix.
Yeah.
And I was just so grateful that they had invested in me, that exposed me to work that I liked. And so I was just happy that I'd done everything up to that point to get admitted and that I could finally practice as an attorney now and that my advice would have a little bit more weight.
Yeah.
But what I also thought about, because I asked one of the practical implications of admission, they said, okay, now you are like legally liable for your advice. Whereas before, you do the research and then I tell client based on what you say. Now, if you do something wrong, like you are professionally liable, and I thought, gee whiz, that's a bit daunting.
Mhm.
So that was what was going through my mind. I'm like, wow, now I'm legally liable for my advice and my practice, and I need to learn what are the ethics. Um, yeah, but I was just being grateful. I was very grateful that I'd gotten to this point, that I'd passed all my admissions exams, and even the application process, the application to get admitted is very stressful in itself with the multiple queries
Yeah.
from the legal practice council. So I was just grateful. That was what was going through my mind.
Yeah, a huge feeling of relief. And I definitely resonate with that
Yeah.
because it's kind of like you have all of this experience and you know what you're talking about, but because you don't have the admitted attorney, it's sort of like there's not much weight, even though you know they should
Yeah.
be. But then when you finally have it, you're like, I know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now you can say, I think you should do this.
Yes. I would
Yeah.
do this.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would not recommend that. You know,
Yeah.
now it's like nice and weighty.
Yeah. No, that's crazy
Yeah.
because I think we probably all feel the same way. Because even with just starting the space and posting, I wanted to do it long
Yeah.
before, but I thought people are gonna be like, "But you're not even an admitted attorney. What are you talking about?"
Exactly. 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 And you tend to run away from even giving advice. Like I always, before I got admitted, even in a situation where it was acceptable to say what I think, I would always hide behind someone more senior than me and
Yeah,
say, is this correct? I still do that, but it's nice to know that I have like I'm qualified. It's really nice to know that. And to get your stamps, you get stamps that have your name and
yes,
that say attorney, and that's like right your the address of your firm, and you can certify documents, so that's very
right.
cool.
I know.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
We're almost done with the questions and then the people on the call will get the floor. So
Yeah.
I think this question is related to the last one after this. It's basically how has the shift from candidate attorney to attorney felt? And have there been any unexpected changes in your role and responsibilities since admission? Because again, now your name carries more weight, and I mean, like you can commission documents now, which previously you couldn't. I mean, there's a lot
Yeah.
few things you can do once you admitted that you can't do. So how has
Yeah.
your role changed? And also, what's been your biggest like I'm really doing this since being admitted, because I'm also sure that the line of work and the importance, I would, if I can say it like that, of the work that you're involved in now is up, on a higher scale than what it was when you're still a Candace attorney and you're still a little shaky and wobbly.
Yes. So yes, so the expectations are definitely different now. So first of all, budget increases. So your fee targets they increase. So
Oh.
that's the first thing that happens. Yeah, so you have to generate more income for the firm, and that's very daunting. But luckily, your rates are also adjusted accordingly, so that's nice and fair. And you are expected to the way in which you carry yourself and the responsibility just obviously increases. The work just also increases, like the volume of the work and the expectations for you to go above and beyond. They also increase because you're not just doing articles, you're an actual attorney, and you're expected to conduct yourself as someone who can build their own practice and sustain their practice. So you need to cross your T's and dot your I's a bit better
Mm,
now, and there's less tolerance for tardiness and not paying attention to detail because now you're an attorney. So it's just the weight of the expectations does rise. But again, like I think surround yourself with like mentors. That's my thing. I've always just surrounded myself with mentors, and even if I felt like I didn't have a mentor, I always just like look at someone whose practice I admire and get close to them and just ask them for advice. How should I do this? How should I do that? And yeah, I think that's the shift that I've noticed.
mm, okay, sure. That's actually a bit intimidating, I would say, because when you're doing articles, you look at all the attorneys and it just looks like they're so chilled with each other versus how they are with you when you
Right.
make a mistake. So,
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
yeah, whilst it's actually the other way around, the standard is even higher because, I mean, you've been trained, you know what you're doing, we're putting more trust in you. Okay.
Yes, and you have to be willing to go above and beyond and bring more value. You can't it's not necessarily being about just doing what you're told. Like you need to be able to anticipate what the next step will be beyond the task you've just been given, and to preempt any questions people might have. You basically have to make everyone's lives as easy as possible by going above and beyond, you know. And
Mm,
that's how you gain more trust, and that's how you don't like crumble with the weight of the responsibility that you're suddenly given.
okay.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for
yeah,
that. Okay, and then the last line of questions is basically in consideration to law students and graduates, which we have on the call. What's
yeah.
something that you think law students stress about, and in hindsight, it doesn't really matter as much as they think?
Failing a subject, failing a year, it does not matter. For someone who was as devastated as I was, I can't even remember it now. I just know I failed and then like I needed to be a bit more serious.
Mm,
But and failure and mistakes, like I had a mentor from work who said people make mistakes, right? But and you're starting out, you're learning, so I am expecting you to make mistakes, but I'm not expecting you to repeat your mistakes.
mm,
Okay, so don't your mistakes, please learn from them, don't repeat them. And failure, it's important. Like there are interviews where you're interviewing and people are like, you look too perfect, what are your failures? Because people want to know, because in a corporate environment there are going to be failures. It's incredibly stressful, so
mm,
people need to know that you are able to deal with stress and failure and you can bounce back
mm,
like fairly quickly. So failure becomes like an asset to you.
mm,
Like
mm,
people need to know you can deal with failure, you can deal with stress, because things are not going to go your way. You're going to get incredibly tight deadlines, and it's going to be extremely stressful. So people want to know that you can take failure and move on, and you can learn from, you can get constructive criticism when you failed, you can incorporate that and you can move on. So be happy when you fail. It's for your own good.
I think it's just it's part of the journey. I think the sooner you can get comfortable with failure and the feeling of failure and bouncing back, the better
Yeah.
because it's going to be part of your journey, even your life journey outside of your career. It just comes with failure at every step of the way. And how you deal with it is what matters because you either bounce back better or you stuck in that, and then the next failure comes and you're stuck in that, you know. So yeah, that's a great one. And then
Can
speaking of
I say, can I just add,
yeah.
sorry, can I add something else? Another thing I think people like take into account like a lot is that they think the ranking of the institution where they went is something that's also going to impede them. And I don't think that's necessarily true at all.
I think
Like,
that's perfect
look at,
for Unanani. She asked something like that about the smaller boutique firm. I think that's a perfect piece of advice for her.
yes, no, that does not matter. Like, all that matters is your attitude and your dedication, and you can literally get to wherever you want. Like, look at the Constitutional Court judges. They are like a perfect example of, we don't all have to go to the top ranking like law schools, even high schools, because this is at every stage of life. Like, once you get to university, it's about what high school did you go to. And it seems like some people went to certain high schools, and I'm speaking from a point of privilege because I mean I went to one of those like well-funded high schools. So it seemed like there was, people went to well-funded high schools, had a leg up from people who didn't go to well-funded high schools. And then you get to law, you get to doing articles, and it seems like people went to high ranking universities have a leg up over people who didn't. So it's like at every stage of life, but it doesn't matter. Like, your attitude and how you carry yourself and your ability to learn and adapt will even the playing field very quickly. So that's not something you should pay attention to. Never think, oh, because I went to this university or high school, I shouldn't apply or I don't belong there. Don't think like that at all.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, that's very important. Yeah. Alrighty. And then speaking of CVs, I know that eventually we'll probably have another session just going into this, like we said earlier. But what's one common mistake that you see on legal CVs from early career candidates? Like, what's one common mistake you can identify that you see all the time that will lead to your CV just being chucked to the side?
Um, I've looked at my mentees' CVs, and there were things that they had put there, but they didn't necessarily like explain why they had put it there. So, for example, someone's like, I won a hockey tournament. I'm like, why? Why are you putting that there? They're like, well, it shows I was the captain and I led. I'm like, okay, but you should show why it's there. So put it under leadership, like, you know? So every single thing that is in there must have a purpose. And I think CVs, I've not seen too many mistakes other than that. It's cover letters where it's just like horrendous, where I'm gonna use my mentees. I'm sorry, guys. I love you, but I have to use you guys as an example. They put the name of the wrong law firm. Oh my goodness, that's insane. Don't do that. Don't copy and paste. Again, it shows that you don't have attention to detail. Um, Grammatical errors, like, you have all the tools nowadays to be able to pick up any grammatical errors. It just shows the people you're applying to that you didn't care enough to proofread your cover letter. So I'd say those things: grammatical errors, and not putting in the correct address of the firm, or yeah, and maybe in cover letters as well, people don't show that they know about the firm, that they've done research about the firm. So for example, like in your cover letter, maybe the last time I checked with UCT Career Services, they encouraged us to let them know that, like, this is what I like about your firm. I saw you won this award. I saw you were involved in this case. Like, show them that this is what I like about your firm. This is the value I think it can bring to my development. This is what I think I can learn at your firm, and then show them what you can bring to their firm. So it needs to be a two-way street versus I can give you this. You need to show them that, like, I've looked at you, I've seen these are your practice areas, I've seen these are the awards that you've won. I've seen this is how you develop your professionals, and I think I would gain so much from this. So show the firm that you also have taken the time to know and research about it. So, for example, like my mentees again would do this. They're applying to a purely corporate law firm and they're talking about how they love social justice. Yes, it's great that you love social justice, but where you're applying doesn't have any, it's property law, first of all. It's divorce. There's nothing there to show that there's nothing there about social justice where it could be implemented except in a very niche way. So it doesn't make sense for you to say you're all about the constitution and social justice when you're applying to a firm that doesn't have any of those areas of law. It shows that your CV is generic and you're just mailing it to anyone who will look at it. So be careful of those things. It must be tailored to where you're applying.
Definitely. I definitely agree. And
Yeah.
to add on the aspects of like tailoring your CV and your skills and your cover letter to the specific place that you are like applying to. And so here's an example of what I did when I was applying for articles for the law firm where I did them. I saw that the director who was interviewing me actually specialized in medical negligence in that law firm. So because I knew I was going to be speaking to her, I specifically um sort of structured my cover letter to speak about that because I also had done my thesis in that. So it's not as if it's something I'm just adding on, something that I already knew I was interested in, and I'd have a conversation with her. And then I saw that she was part of some association in the USA, and then I researched that association, and then I put that there. So by the time we had the interview, it was easy for me to speak to her about that, and she felt like, oh, you've really, really, done your research, and you're really a great match because your thesis is also in medical negligence, and now you've been looking at my articles. Because another thing, these law firms, they do sort of want you to be interested in them. They like that you've read up about them and you've seen all
Yeah.
these things about. They like to sit there and be like, yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah.
So I think it's also
Exactly.
giving them that recognition that they want, from you to know that why, because it's always a question of why do you think you're a perfect fit for us and stuff like that. But as Dambisa says, that it's also a two-way street because they also have to be in a position to give you something in terms of your development and in terms of your growth and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah.
Alrighty. I think we're gonna go to the last question and then we will open the floor. If somebody has no legal work experience, so they don't have any VAC work, they're struggling to get VAC work, what should they do to try and build a strong CV? And this is something I'm very passionate about, so I'll just give you the floor.
I'm going to be very strict on on you, Dumiso, and say it's not possible for you to not have work work. Let me explain. So you can go to a law firm and say, listen, I just want to observe. I'm going to observe for a week, and then when I'm done, you write me a letter to say I was here. Literally, like that's very easy to do. Like most law firms will allow you to get that. So it doesn't need to be like a formal VAC work program where they have made a poster to say we are looking for students to conduct VAC work. So you also need to take it into your hands and say,
Approach them.
I just want to, yes, approach them as well. I just want to shadow you. I'm looking, write them like a short email, short letter, call them and say, I just need some work experience and exposure to law. I saw that your law firm practices litigation. I'm going to do articles next year, and I know we're going to have to do litigation. I'm going to have to go to the High Court. I'm going to have to go to the Magistrates Court. I just want to observe for a week, and you just write me a letter. Most people will say yes to that. So don't wait for formal VAC work programs like shadow people.
Mm.
Um, shadow a magistrate, shadow a prosecutor, look for sole practitioners, people who Google like law firms around where you live, like during holidays. I'm from the Eastern Cape in Mthatha, and sometimes I had to go home. So, but I used to go to law firms in the Eastern Cape in Mthatha, where I'm from, and I'd say, "Can I just shadow you?" And you just write me a letter when I'm done. So when people want back work and interviews, they're not necessarily looking for one where the people advertised it for you. They also want, imagine if you show them that that's what you did, show them that you can take initiative,
Yes.
because you're also going to need to do that at work. Like, for example, like if you're, as you were saying, like sometimes you get overlooked and you don't really get given the work. Maybe that's because there are other people who insert themselves and take up space, and you end up getting moved because, like, you're just shrinking into the background.
Mm.
So, like, that's how you practice and that's how you start so that you don't fall by the background and you take matters into your own hands. So, try all of that first before you say you don't have back work. And you don't only need to shadow at a law firm. There's so many other institutions. There's Ndifunukwazi, there's the law clinics in universities. They'll allow you to shadow. They need volunteers. Um, there's legal departments, there's the state attorney, there's so many places where you can go and observe. So I think we just underutilize those places. And also there's for legal work, as I said, there's many other organizations that are international that like make use of the skills of law students. Like for example, like the one Librio Turk, the one that I worked for, you looked at legislation and you summarized it for lay people. So look at everything and try to see what works.
Mm. I definitely agree with you on that because I would say that there's a little project that I'm working on that would be a workshop. I think you'd definitely be great to collaborate with on that because it also looks at the aspects of approaching law firms, which is something that I did do. But I think I did it too late
Yeah.
because by the time I graduated, it was COVID. So by that time, it
Yeah.
didn't matter how many doors you're really knocking on because everything was just upside down. But I definitely agree with
Yeah.
you that you can actually approach law firms and companies and whatnot. And the sooner you do it, the better. But then let me ask you this. Do you think that only legal experience matters in terms of building your CV? If somebody doesn't necessarily go the VAC work routes, or maybe they do part-time, let's say they work in a library part-time or they do something else, do you think that that experience would be useful for their CV, even though it's not necessarily legal experience?
It's extremely useful because again, when you are told to go do VAC work, they're not wanting you to be a lawyer before you're expected to be a lawyer before you time. They want, the purpose of it is to develop your soft skills.
Mhm.
So it's to develop your communication skills, your ability to deal with pressure, your ability to
Conflict.
work.
Mm,
Yes, pressure, conflict. That's the purpose of why you are required to have some work experience and exposure to what you want. So those are great. Those are of that goes without saying. You have to have other skills.
mm,
Even with VAC work, I would encourage other people to try other forms of work, VAC work and something else.
mm,
Again, that shows that you're dynamic, you're adaptable. You once worked in a library, that means they like books, that means they like reading, that
mm,
means they're comfortable with strangers because strangers come every day in a library. So that shows how dynamic you are and what value you've derived from the library that you could bring to them.
mm, mm. Ah, yeah.
Yeah,
The reason I'm asking that is because I'm on the other side of the coin. You're on the back work and the legal side, and I'm on the get
yeah,
any form of practical work experience that you can get because, like what Dambis is saying, is that it's really about the skills acquisition that you get from that experience, and it
yeah.
also opens up your mind. By the time that, for example, by the time that I went into articles. there's a lot of mistakes that I was not making because I had been exposed to a professional working environment. I'd seen conflicts live. I'd seen you see things fester and you're able to discern that okay, this is not going to end well. Maybe a client is unhappy. You're able to resolve that and handle that before it blows up, before they report you to a director or something like that. So the most important part that anybody can get from this is get yourself in there, get that exposure so that you can also learn. And another thing I would say, it helps you to learn a lot about yourself also. So you already know what environments you thrive in and what environments are not necessarily for you. So by the time that you are structuring your legal career or what you want to go to, you know that okay, these are the roles that I would avoid and these are the roles that I would like thrive in. For example, with myself, I knew because I started in corporate and I knew how much I loved that form of environment. When I was in practice, I knew that this cannot be for me. So
Yeah.
yeah, it definitely helps in that. And then the final question, but they're gonna be asking you questions now, is just that like, what piece of advice would you give to your younger self if you had any advice to your younger self who was maybe in university or at the beginning of your articles, and it can be related to anything at all because sometimes we learn lessons that are not necessarily related to the work but about ourselves, like attitude. Sometimes you walk in with a chip on your shoulder and then you walk out a little humbled. So what piece of advice would
Yeah.
you give to your younger self?
Um, it would be you belong there. You're
Mm,
not there by mistake, and surround yourself with great mentors.
mm,
And you need to act like you belong there. Don't shrink,
mm,
because like I struggled with that, where you think they must have made a mistake. Like they might fire me any second now. And so that affects like how you talk, how
how you
you see
present.
yourself, and how you interact. Exactly. I was talking to one of my mentors, and they said you need to be more confident. Like you will be suggesting something, but you're shrinking and you're wondering, is it wrong? Now you're making me nervous because you're not sure about what you're saying. So I'd give myself that advice, and I'd say I need to surround myself with mentors early. Like the skills and the information that you get from mentors is like nothing else.
I think that's so important because in an environment where you're a person of color like we are, and for example, in my law firm, I was the first black candidate attorney that they hired. For the law firm had existed for 25 years before they hired a black candidate attorney. Everybody else has always been white. So I always felt
Yeah.
like an imposter because of that alone. And then you constantly feel like you're being watched and you better not make one mistake. So that leads to
Yeah.
you being super hard on yourself on the small things and also shrinking yourself because you constantly have this imposter syndrome in your mind, like, did they make a mistake? I don't really belong. Who am I to even suggest something? Like, who asked you? So I would
Yeah.
definitely agree with that. Definitely. All
Yeah,
right.
especially being a person of color. Sorry to cut off, but yeah, that does play into your psyche a bit. You always think like, do I really belong here? But again, like the mentors make it worth it because they tell you, yes, you belong here. They didn't make a mistake. No one would just like bother to train someone that they didn't want there.
Mm-mm.
So that really helps. Yeah.
Mm. All right, cool. So for the next let's say 15 minutes, maybe until like 32 minutes past one, I think 33 minutes past one, we can just open the floor to you guys and you can ask Dambisa or myself, but specifically with Dambisa as she's our guest, any questions based on all of the answers that she's given. Anyone can go ahead. Polisa, Sisonke, Tsepo, anyone can go ahead. Do you guys have any questions? Nope. Maybe let me read something from the chat while we give them a chance.
Okay.
Oh, here we go. So Lutabo said, as a law student eager to deepen my understanding of commercial and corporate law. I would be interested to learn how she navigated the transition from academic studies to practical application in this specialized field. Specifically, I would like to know what foundational skills or knowledge she found most critical during her early days as a lawyer, and how she continues to develop these skills in a fast evolving legal landscape. Additionally, I'm curious about her perspective on the challenges and ethical considerations unique to commercial law practice in South Africa, especially in relation to corporate governance and compliance. Finally, I would appreciate any advice you could offer on how law students and recent graduates can effectively position themselves for success in this competitive area, including any recommendations for internships, networking, or further study. That's a
We're
packed
going to have
question.
to. Yes, let's break it down. So the first one was, what was the first aspect of the question? I think let's go through it step by step.
Yeah, he or she says that I would be interested to learn how she navigated the transition from academic studies to practical application in this specialized field.
Right. I just want to write it down. Okay, so how did I navigate the transition from
Academic.
university, knowing I want to do corporate commercial law? How did I position myself in a position to do it? So there are rotations in my firm. So I did put a request that I would love to rotate in the corporate commercial department. And once I got there, it's not like litigation, because with litigation, like, you start off filing, then you get to drafting stuff. There, everything that you do, you need to have like background knowledge of. Like, for example, in litigation, you cannot really know like the merits of the matter, but you can still help. Like, you can still file things, you can still draft applications. Obviously, it's advisable that you bring yourself up to date with everything. But
Mhm,
in corporate commercial, I found that everything needed research, and you needed to have like a working knowledge of how everything works. So, for example, if there's like a share sale, if there's been a share of sale, you need to acquaint yourself with what part of the Companies Act governs share sales. What resolutions do you need? Like, is it a director's resolution? Is it a shareholder's resolution? What does the memorandum of incorporation of the company say about how to transfer shares? Are there any restrictions? So it was very research intense, and that you need to technically know how it works. So I did a lot of research. I made sure that I was up to date with the Companies Act and various other legislation that accompanies it. And there's also many inquiries that deal with like the Consumer Protection Act. So I made sure that I have a very good working knowledge of those acts, such that I know where to look for what. So it is a department where you need to constantly read, like, you need to be up to date. For example, there were just amendments to the Companies Act. So I
mm,
need to make sure that I know those amendments, so that I don't do an agreement or give advice that's outdated, you
mm,
know. So you need to do your research.
mm.
So that's the first aspect of it. It is research. You don't stop doing your research. Once you're in, you need to continue to do your research.
So it's just like it's a
What's the
mhm. Yeah, okay.
sorry?
No, I think you just answered that because he or she was speaking about foundational skills or knowledge that are most critical. So I think it would definitely be that aspect that you never stop doing research, because I think that we also have this misconception that once you're done with your law degree, that's all the research and studying that you need, that you're
No,
doing. From
no.
that stage on, it's just time to just, get into getting your hands into it. But I think the research aspect of it really never stops. Okay. And
So
then I think
exactly.
second one is saying, curious about her perspective on the challenges and ethical considerations unique to commercial law practice in South Africa, especially in relation to corporate governance and compliance.
When you say challenges and ethical considerations, what do you mean? Are you speaking about like a particular matter or a particular case where there was ethics involved? I'd like some elaboration on that.
It doesn't look like they're still on the call. They might have jumped off or their connection failed. So unfortunately, we can't say
Yes,
what they were talking
yes,
about.
yes.
And then,
Yeah, so yeah, I would need a more specific case of what do they mean, like the ethical considerations.
mm,
Do they mean like philosophically, like capitalism, which is what underpins corporate commercial law versus like communism? What do they like? I'd like more context.
mm, unfortunately, we will not be getting more context in this one. And then, I see. Maybe let's go on to Tabo because we are running out of time. Sorry, Tsepo. Tsepo
Yeah.
raised their hand. So, Tsepo, you can go ahead. Mm,
I'm audible.
yes, we can hear you now.
Hi, thank you. I firstly just want to say thank you for this informative session. I did learn a lot, and you guys are hilarious.
That's why we're friends. Yeah, but thank you so much,
Yeah,
Tsepo.
right. So, I first wanted to ask, like, what soft skills do you like? What resources can a law student use in order to gain like soft skills? I know there is Forage. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but where you sort of do like legal simulation tasks. Like I think they have one in DLA, Piper and Bowman's. So are those things that a law student can get into, and can you actually include that in your CV? That's my first question. Um, my second question is to Dambisa. Like, how do you actually keep abreast with like current affairs in terms of like mergers and acquisitions and stuff like that? Because I normally watch like the news and they cover a lot of criminal law. I struggle to actually keep up with current affairs in terms of like corporate and commercial law. Thank you.
Okay. And and do me so must I take that or
You can go ahead on the first question and then I'll add, and then you can go ahead on the second question because it's directed to you.
right? So the first thing you asked, what resources can law students use to develop their soft skills? So soft skills are things like your communication. It's not like your technical skills, which is like your ability to research the law and give a legally sound like reasoning as to why something is wrong or right or what the client should do. So soft skills is your ability to communicate, your ability to manage deadlines, your ability to manage relationships, your ability to manage conflict, your ability to self-regulate your emotions and bounce back from conflict. So it's all those other interpersonal skills. So how you develop them, you must consciously develop them. You need to first of all identify what your weaknesses are. Okay, so you need to know like this is my personality, and as a result of my personality, I am hyper organized and rigid. So I need to learn how to be more flexible and accommodating with different opinions, or I'm very free spirited and creative, which means I'm not organized. So I struggle with deadlines, which means if I think I need a day for something, I probably need 3 days. Otherwise, I'm going to miss the deadline. So you identify the soft skills that you lack, because I think everyone has these soft skills. It's just you lack some, so you need to identify which are the ones that you lack. And then once you've identified what are the soft skills that you've learned, like leadership, then you do something that's going to develop those skills. Like, for example, like working at the library will definitely develop your communication skills. Working anywhere where you need to communicate and you need to research and you need to write your ideas in an organized way will develop your communication skills. So I'd say
Sorry,
um,
Dambisa,
there are different ways.
He says in the chat that he means technical skills. Thank you for pointing that out. So it's good that you've went into the soft skills. I think you can also look at the technical skills, how he can develop them, because I think he mentioned that with the I think he mentioned forage with Bowman's and other sort of
Yes, yes.
opportunities they're providing for you to be in a legal simulation environments and stuff like that. If that's useful, how else can he then develop his technical skills?
Yes, I was actually coming to that. I was gonna do soft skills, technical skills. So yes, with I also partook in the forage program with Bowman. So I think that's a great way to develop your technical skills. So definitely do that. Any programs that are offered by law firms such as Forage, definitely partake in that. And I think Forage actually gives you like a certificate of completion in the end. So when you do apply to Bowman's, you can show them that like I've done Forage, which gives a simulation of the technical demands, well, sort of the technical demands that come with working there. So take advantage of all of those. I forgot to share something. There's a program called Leaply where you can see vacation programs and articles that are still open. So I think you guys should make use of that. It's Leapli. It's
LY.
called Leaply.
Think it's L. Okay, I'll
Yes,
put it on
Ly.
the
Sorry.
I'll just put it on the chat. Okay.
Yes, it's called Leaply. Yes, exactly. So Leaply will show you the vacation work that's still open. It will show you articles where firms that are still accepting articles, and it will give you the requirements for that. So that's another resource that I forgot to share with you guys. So yes, like how to develop your technical skills. You can also develop. You can also partake in moot court. Like moot court is amazing because it teaches you research skills because you have to engage with case law and you have to make your argument. So that's also a great way to develop technical skills, as well as that organizations that I was talking about. Like for example, the one where I said I used to summarize like legislation for lay people. So that taught me how to read large volumes of information and um, summarize it in a way that's understandable for the everyday person. So there's multiple ways in which you can develop your technical skills.
All right.
And then the last,
Oh,
okay, sorry.
I'll just jump in that and then you can get into the second question of keeping up with current affairs. I would also say that any opportunity you can get in terms of the programs that law firms or legal companies, or even I see that banks are also offering programs where if you're interested in banking law or finance law, you can do a short course with them and then you can get a certificate. Even Google offers opportunities like that for free certifications, and sometimes, obviously, there are paid certifications. Do that because another thing is where there are, I don't know, 2,000 graduates, and each and every one of them has the exact same thing on their CV where maybe they did participate in this association and then they've got their interests and hobbies, like which Dambisa already mentioned, that it's not really something that recruiters care about, unfortunately. It's more about your skills and bringing more of your professional aspects onto your CV. I would say put that on because you're not only then showing that you're somebody who's done great in your LLB, because unfortunately you're not the only one who has the degree, but being able to add more if I would like more education to your CV, that's good. It gives you a bit of a leg up because you have something on your CV that not necessarily a lot of people would have. So something that I did straight after graduating, because I was afraid that I didn't want my CV to look like everybody else's, I did a random paralegal course because that course went into specifics about how a law firm operates. And since I had never been in a law firm environment, by the time I was interviewing, when they asked me questions about billings and organization of files, I was able to answer those questions because of that course that I did. And it also struck a bit of interest in the in with the recruiters to say, but what is this course? What is this about? We haven't seen this on any other CV. And then I was able to go into that and be like, yes. So I wanted to expand my knowledge on the practical aspects of how a law firm works because I haven't been exposed to one. So that really helped. And then as to developing both your soft skills and your technical skills, I would say getting back to what Udambis and I was saying, that put yourself out there and get exposure to actual practical work environments because a simulation might give you an idea of what that is like, and it's easy for you to say, "This is how I would react. This is how I would handle this." But when you're actually in a practical work environment, when you structure your CV, it's easy for you to say that these are my weaknesses. For example, for me, one of my weaknesses is telling people bad news because I have a hard time having to break it down to somebody and tell them bad news. But in order for me to realize that weakness and to be able to demonstrate it and explain it, I can say, okay, when I was like working in this role, this is, for example, when I was working in personal injury, somebody will come in and have the most painful story you've ever heard about how they were mistreated in a hospital and they lost their leg and they lost their job and I'd have to be in a position to tell them, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to take your matter on because you don't have enough evidence. It's not gross medical negligence. So what I'm trying to say is the best place and the best way for you to develop your soft skills and your technical skills is out there in the arena because it also teaches you something new about yourself and how you put that on your CV. Like what Dambisa said, you don't just say, did this or communication. You put it in such a way that you can say, for example, leadership. I successfully led our departments to ensure that this outcome was the result. In a way, to put it in a short form of a way, it's important that you put your value out there. What value did somebody get because you were there? What would have happened if you were not there? All right. So you put it in terms of the goals that you achieved with those, with what you were doing, so that the recruiter can see that, okay, cool. The value that you bring in terms of organization is that in this role, you were doing one, two, three, and four, where else if you had not done it or if you had not excelled in it, this was not going to be the result. It would have been disaster. Without Sepo in this department, without Sepo working in that library, without Sepo working at that front cashier till making sure that all of the orders were coming through, this would have been the disaster. Without Sepo being there to resolve the conflicts with his colleagues, this would have been the results, you know. So I think that's how I would um gather the skills. Just go out there and also put it there in a way that shows the recruiter what value you were able to bring in that role and how you've gathered those skills. I think Dambisa, you can go ahead on the second question. Then I think we will allow one more question. Then we're gonna have to jet off.
The second question was, how do I keep abreast of current affairs? I read I read the newspapers. Um, we also have at our law firm we have something called legal brief, which tells you about all the current affairs, and we have newsletters uh, for each individual practice. So there's a corporate commercial one, there's a competition law one, there's a labor law one. So I do read those quite a bit to make sure that I do keep um, up to date with current affairs. But I think the news and newspapers is a good way if you don't have access to like legal brief, which summarizes everything that will be applicable to my area of practice. And I think LexisNexis as well also has like a news bulletin site that shows news that are applicable to different areas of law.
Mm, Okay. Sorry, I'm just looking at the questions in the chat.
And sorry, LinkedIn.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, LinkedIn is also actually becoming like a great way of keeping up to date with current legal affairs because people often have articles that address like a very recent legal issue. So I do make sure I read people's articles as well because sometimes they'll tell you that there's been a change in the law.
And
So
what
that's also a good way to keep. Yes, exactly.
Okay, I'm gonna quickly brush through these questions, but Nanani was asking if you could have a look at her CV if you have a moment to see if she's heading in the right direction. I think you can think about that and then come back. And then Sisonke was saying that she's currently traveling, so she does will hear her, but Thank you for availing yourselves and sharing the information. Her question is, she sees that research is an important aspect, even in the job description. The company is looking for somebody who has knowledge on specific acts, some that she doesn't know. In the interview, how does she show that she is a good candidate? Because she's afraid they might ask her about an act she's not familiar with.
Sorry, I lost you there for a bit. How does she show what?
How does it's basically on the aspects of research, right? So I think she's the one who's got the interview on
Yes,
Tuesday. She's saying that seeing that
yes.
research is an important aspect, how does she show that she's a good candidate, even though she doesn't know the specific acts that they might ask about? And in the interview, how does she then show that she's a good candidate because she is afraid they might ask her about an act she's not familiar with? So how does she then handle that if they just ask her about a random act that she didn't even read up about?
That happened in my interview where they asked me about an area of law that they asked about the doctrine of estoppel, and I had completely forgotten what the doctrine of estoppel was. Um, so I'd say look at what organization that this is. So, for example, if you're going to interview, and Mr. Do you have any details about what type of organization this is?
I think she said
Is it
she's
like an
interviewing with, I think it's SAMU. I think it's a medical scheme. If I'm not mistaken. So Sanke, you can just yeah, you can answer that.
Yes. No, that's enough information. That's why I can answer it based on that. So, if it's a medical scheme, obviously you have to look at the applicable legislation that applies to the medical sector. So, there's a Medical Schemes Act, right? There's a Medical Schemes Act. I don't really know the different acts like that, but there's that distinction between a medical insurance and medical aid. Those are the types of questions that are. So make sure that you have a working knowledge with those acts. And then if you don't know a certain act, just be honest and say that you don't know the act, and actually ask them what the act says, and say, well, you don't know the act, but you are able to um, you are able to acquaint yourself very quickly with an act that you don't know, and you're able to do your research. So show them that, and they won't expect you to know everything, because not everyone knows everything. You often have to research something before you can give advice on it. So just be honest, say, honestly, I do not know what the act says. Do you mind telling me what it says? And then you discuss it with them and say, yes, I don't know, but even if I don't know it, I am able to use the legal research databases, your LexisNexis, your Juta, and I'm able to read the commentary, read the judgments to tell you what the answer is. So don't be shy to say you don't know what it is, but you don't not know the most famous one that governs everything. So make sure that you know the most common ones.
Yeah. And to add on to that, I would say with the interviews that I've had, they always give you an opportunity to ask them questions. So I would say definitely read up on the acts that govern their organization and ask them a question in relation to that. So if there's been maybe a recent I don't know, a recent change in the act or anything like that, or even anything that's sticks out to you, ask them about that. But like, how does your organization handle this? Because it looks like there is a certain restriction on that with certain exceptions. How does your organization handle this? Because even if you didn't know that one of the questions, you this in this way you're able to bounce back and show that you've read up on the
Yes.
act that is important to them and stuff like that. So they can gather that, okay, you might have not known this, but you definitely read up on this, and you've asked us this question and stuff like that. So I would definitely recommend that.
If I can just add, like, if in the medical sector, in the medical legal community right now, the hottest thing is the National Health Insurance Act. I'm sure they're going to ask you about that. Even if they don't ask you, ask them what they think about that. You
Mm.
know, like, there's so many things that you could ask them. Say, how will this affect your practice if it does come into law? how do you think it's going to affect your practice? Maybe they'll ask you how it's going to affect everything. So make sure you know about that.
Mm, mm, definitely. Okay, and
Yeah.
then Utsep was asking what's the name of the organization that you worked for in uni that summarizes legislation for lay people. I think it probably wants you to go check them out to see if they are still doing that, if they have any opportunities available.
It's not a South African organization. I think it was Scottish, if I'm not mistaken. It's called Libryo. Libryo.
Librio. Okay. Maybe you can quickly
Yes.
put it in the chat. You can type it in the chat so that they can get a the name before we close off the meeting because the chat will disappear, I think, after we log off the meeting. And then she was asking, Unalani was asking, where do you do short courses for banks and financing? I think I posted it on the Legal Launchpad group recently because I saw something by ABSA, but different banks will offer them at different times. I'm just gonna have a look again and I'll post it on the group for you. If you haven't joined, basically you can just connect with me on LinkedIn and then you'll be able to see the group is basically attached to my profile. In any event, I do share posts and link them to the group, so you can just get it there. Um, and then okay, guys, we are going to be ending off. Do you have any last questions before we wrap up and end off? Going once, going twice. Okay. Um,
Sorry, I just lost connection for a bit.
no, it's okay. I'm just asking them if they have any last questions before we go off.
Right.
Um, all right. Okay, guys, we are gonna get heading out. It is a public holiday after oral, and yeah, everybody has their own plans and whatnot. So thank you so much for joining, guys, and also for the questions. We appreciate you guys also being here because at the end of the day, I don't know, for from both our sides and anybody else who does this, it's just important to sort of feel that you're giving back to the community that you come from because, like I said in the beginning, all of the pains that you guys feel, all of the fear, the anxiety, we resonate with it because we are once there, you know. So to be able to come together in this way is really important. And we will work together to see what we can offer in terms of mentorship and in terms of resources. We will definitely work together and maybe like have a workshop looking at CV writing because that's very important. I know that there's a lot of people who are obviously doing final year. And this is like crunch time in terms of applying and stuff like that. So we'll be interested in getting to that. You can just basically connect with us, add Dambisa on LinkedIn, and yeah, I think that will enable us to stay in touch. And when the next thing comes out, you guys will be able to see it. So thank you so much. Dambisa, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for answering all of the questions. And
Yes.
yes, thank you for opening up
Can
your.
I just answer one last question before you go? There was a student who asked if I could look at their CV. I'd be happy to.
Okay,
Um,
cool.
I
Then
don't know how to. Will you just facilitate that on your end? How will it work?
I think she can connect with you on LinkedIn and send you a DM, a direct message. Then
Okay.
there you guys can
Okay.
either interact
Okay.
there and or if you're comfortable via email or however you interact with your mentees, maybe you can add her to that
Yes.
community
Yes. Yes. Definitely. I think send me
connection
a
request.
direct message on LinkedIn and I'll be happy to look at it and also share the resources that I was talking about.
Mm, okay. All right. Thank you so much, guys. Enjoy the rest of your youth day. Thank you so much. And yeah, we'll catch you on the next one. Bye.
Bye, everyone.